Call to order the regular meeting of the Terre Haute City Council, 6 p.m. Thursday, March 7th, 2019. We start our meetings with a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, led tonight by Councilperson Neil Garrison.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilperson Aller.
Present.
Councilperson Azar.
Here.
Councilperson Crossan.
Present.
Councilperson DeBon.
Here.
Councilperson Elliott.
Here.
Councilperson Garrison.
Here.
Councilperson Morris.
Here.
Councilperson Nasser.
Present.
Councilperson Nation.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. By tradition, we have 30 minutes of time at the start of our meeting set aside for public comment by the public on issues that are not on our agenda. There are agendas up here at the front pew if you don't have one and would like one. If you're here to comment on one of the issues that's on the agenda, you will wait till that comes up. So if there's anybody who wants to speak on a non-agenda item, please identify yourself, give your address, and then we would like to hear from you.
My name is Donald Hyde. I live at 1411 Poplar Street. Well, it's now March. The big thing about this year in March is this is the year where the citizens of Terre Haute and Bible County get elected local officials. Now, in the past, that's been a so-so election because the local officials haven't been doing much, haven't been spending much money. But this particular year, I'm afraid this is going to be one of those elections that's going to break all records. Because there's not one, not two, but at least three things on the agenda, actually 4 things on the agenda, that's going to have replications over the entire 2020 decade. We've got to, again, we've spent the money, it's already been authorized by the county council to build a new jail. But yet, they haven't figured out where they're going to build that jail. And the cost, there's no final cost on the thing yet, because they've got to buy the land, got to figure out where they're going to put it. Personally, I think they need to put it right behind the old jail. They got a square block they could dig up, they could build one there, and they could keep saving some money by having the people walk to and from the court, from the jail. There'd be plenty of room to do that if done right. And they could put a second story on the thing, not to put more prisoners in it, but to have a recreational center, which would take that part of all the stuff. I've read the thing why we're being sued, and actually I can't disagree with it. Like I said before, our arms are behind our backs, we've agreed to build it. But the thing is this, now we've agreed to build it, we need to build it right, and make sure we don't have to build it again for 60-plus years, if not longer. The second thing is our schools. As, again, the City Council, because of a decision made in the early 1960s and voted on in 66, the City Council's off the hook on the city schools anymore. They're gone, their history. But if you think I'm going to let you guys get off by saying, well, the City Council has no business with the schools, there's still 9 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and I believe now 3 high schools in the city limits. So you're not off the hook when it comes to the schools. We're going to spend, now what we're spending on the jail is a large sum of money. We're going to spend on them schools to range from anywhere from $100 million to $300 million. And we're only going to build 3 schools. Now, they want a 4th school built, but I'm not sure they're going to get that one. Then there comes the thing that we've also already agreed on the money, and that includes you. This is one you guys are in on. It's the, I can't even name it. It's what you're going to build at 8th and Chestnut, 8th and Wabash.
Convention Center.
The Convention Center. There we go. It's already in the paper where the City Council has put up $10 million of their own money to build it. The county council's put up $10 million, and some other group, another state organization, has put up $5 million. So $25 million of tax money, on my dad, is paid by everybody in this city and county, has been put up. Now, what I want to make sure doesn't happen is what happened when you guys built that little thing between 6th Street and 7th Street, and you built a nice, tall building to help try to get downtown thing going. You did it back in '08 or '09 or something, we built it, and then we sold it a few years later at a loss. Now, tax money was spent on that, and we lost, because they decided to sell it to private enterprise. Now, you don't watch what you're doing with the way that they word all this stuff, and that's, I'm talking to you, and this is right up your alley. You're going to put yourself in a position where a group of investors are going to come along, and 2, 3, 4 years down the road, for whatever reason, I don't care and I don't know, but I guarantee you this, if they can get away with it, they'll try and take over that convention center and turn it into private enterprise. My point's this: if we have spent $25 million of our taxpayer money of this county, one way or the other, what are we, the taxpayers, getting out of that convention center? When ISU was built 40 years ago, they built a big building, and all of a sudden, concerts that we've never gotten, Terre Haute, suddenly came to town. In other words, there was something, and you could see there was a place you could go and entertain your family or yourself. For at least 5, 10 years, we got something out of that. The school got something out of that. In other words, it was worth the investment. My question to you is, make sure that when you get this convention center going, and you're going to, it's like the jail, it's going to happen. Make sure, though, that the community gets something out of it for their tax investment, and also that it works, that keep it working, and it doesn't end up costing us more money than it brings in. Finally,
Please wrap up, Mr.
all right,
White.
I'll sit down and think of the fourth one, because there is a fourth one. But my point's this, and I don't need to tell you this: this election coming up will be all about those subjects. There may be other subjects tossed in, but you can guarantee you the public at large, everybody, rich or poor, they're going to know about those subjects and have an opinion about it. And you guys need to inform the public of how those things are going, whether you're city council, county council, school board, whatever, because that's what's going to be the main thing on the ballot and what's going to get people to vote one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on a non-agenda item?
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Noah Gamble. I'm an attorney with Wagner, Crawford, Gamble, and Jungers, 416 South 6th Street, Terre Haute, Indiana, 47807. I'm here as a follow-up to a matter that we resolved in September of 2017. And I represent the members of the 1925 pensioners, public safety pensioners, which we established an ordinance in September of 2017 by approval of this body to create a segregated fund from the general fund to ensure that those pensioners, those monies were used solely for those police pensioners as a negotiation with the city and the city attorney. So I'm here as a follow-up. I've talked to Mr. Felling, but to make this body aware that by January 1st of this year, there was supposed to be a separate segregated account set up by the city as part of that negotiation and part of that ordinance that was passed by this body. And so we've sought out assurances from Mr. Felling and the city that that was created. We're at a follow-up, and I think Mr. Felling has been working on that to make sure that that has been followed. So.
And I can respond to that. I want to thank Mr. Gamble for his help and diligent work on getting us moving forward on this issue. I can report that my understanding is we have a new account that's created specifically for those 1925 fund. members. Council should be aware it works very similarly to how our property tax distributions work inside the city. So we have 2 distributions that come from the state each year that go to help and should technically cover all of the costs associated with the 1925 fund. Unfortunately, the distributions don't cover the entire cost, so the city ends up having to front those amounts. So, for example, when we're in March, the distribution we'll get in June, we're paying ahead out of our own pockets before we get the recuperation from the state. So we have created the account. There's a negligible amount in the account just for purposes of getting it established. This June will be the first distribution that we'll receive that will go directly in to that account, so we can see exactly what's been given to us from the state. Then that money will be turned around and then pulled directly out of that account to help recuperate what we forwarded as far as expenses are concerned from that particular account. So hopefully we are on the track that we anticipated back in 2017. It will take some time, obviously, to make sure all the procedures. This is going to be kind of a new step for us on how we're handling those dollars. So I'd be happy to answer the questions.
No, did you have any?
I guess it's more of a question for the controller when that account was created. I've reached out to Mr. Felling, and he was looking into it, but through some miscommunication of many different of old past emails that I unexpectedly used for Eddie, I corrected that. But January 30th, we looked into it. But I would certainly was hoping that I need to check with the controller when that account was created, and hopefully it was created before January 1st. But that would be my concern. But I think that's more of a question for the controller, because I don't think you have that information in front of you.
Councilperson Nasser?
And Noah, that is a question for the controller, because we still don't have end of the year financials, let alone January or February's financials from the administration. So that would be a question you need to follow up with the controller's office.
And that's what we'll do. My concern is that that the last distribution should have been set up in that segregated account before January 1st. And again, the whole purpose was to segregate this money from the general fund, pursuant to what we believe the interpretation of the state statute, that, to help protect those monies for the 1925 pensioners. Because of a concern of what happened the spring of 2017. So we'll be following up with that, and let's hope that with the assistance of the council, we can get that information with regard to, making sure that what we negotiated is followed through.
I'd just like to say, Eddie, is it fair for us to ask you to report back to us on that, too?
That's no problem.
Since neither Leslie or the mayor are here.
So, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak on a matter not on the agenda? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Are there any corrections to the journal?
There are none.
Any communications from the mayor?
I did not receive any.
We do have a report from a city official tonight, and I'd like to invite Melissa Reed from the Human Relations Commission to come forward.
Good evening, Council President and member of the council. Melissa Reed, Director of the Human Relations Commission. I did have very high hopes this evening that I was going to provide you with a very nice, bounded 2018 annual report. However, I've been a little busy out in the community doing some programming, and I just haven't had time to do some of that administrative stuff. But it is in the works, and I do plan on having that to you very soon. I would like to give you a quick recap, however, of some of the things that the Human Relations Commission did in 2018. So we did have 66 telephone or in-office consultations that took place in 2018. Many of those calls do fall outside of the ordinances that govern the HRC. So some of those might look like requests for rent or utility assistance, housing for the homeless, food, employment, poor living conditions. But I'm always available to give referrals and resources, so I do not turn anybody away without giving them something to help them. One complaint pertaining to employment discrimination based on gender actually went into the mediation process. With the help of City Attorney Eddie Felling, the HRC was able to successfully mediate that complaint here locally, and no other government, state or federal agencies needed to be involved. So we were able to mediate that and meet the needs of both sides. You do have a handout in front of you that illustrates some of the data that I'm about to share. So of those calls where a bias element was present, 16 were based on race, 1 was based on color, 1 was based on religion, 1 was based on national origin, 2 were based on age, and when we say age, we're talking about 40 years and older. 1 was based on gender, 4 were based on sexual orientation. 1 of those was an HIV status. So one of those individuals did test positive for HIV, and that's where his complaint came from. 1 was based on family status, which was a pregnant woman. 23 were based on mental or physical disabilities. So of those complaints, 5 were in education, 11 were in employment, 18 were in housing or shelters, 10 were in public accommodations, and 6 were tenant-landlord issues that were a little outside of the fair housing regulations. So they were more just tenant-landlord complaints. So that totals 50 consultations out of those 66 where I saw that there was definitely a bias element that may be present and that their human civil rights were violated. So like I mentioned, not all of these complaints turned into a full inquiry. Some of them were able to be handled by a simple call or a simple meeting with the respondent, and we were able to stop those practices immediately. Some required no action at all from the HRC because I had to refer them on to the Indiana Civil Rights Commission or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And if those complainants don't get back to me with what they did further, I have no way of tracking what they've done after they leave the Human Relations Commission. In April of 2018, I had the opportunity to address this council to describe some of the projects and prevention initiatives I started, and I would like to share some of the progress of those programs this evening. We did raise our score on the Municipal Equality Index that was created by the Human Rights Campaign. This index is a nationwide evaluation of municipal laws, policies, and services affecting the LGBTQ+ community. In 2017, we scored 41 out of 100 points. But in 2018, we were able to increase that score to 52. I have provided copies of the scores from the last 3 years for you, and those are in your packet. I am committed to continue to lead the city to be more inclusive to the LGBTQ+ community and have been working with City Legal and Mayor Bennett to increase our score for 2019. Work is still being done to create a community action plan to address the needs of our homeless neighbors when the weather is too dangerous to be outside. Many meetings have taken place, and I've been working with Brendan Kearns and other county officials, the Homeless Council of the Wabash Valley, and many social service agencies to make this happen. Progress is obviously very slow, but I continue to engage in the conversation about creating an emergency response plan to provide warm, cool places to those that have no place to go when they cannot meet the requirements for shelter or when all of our shelters are full. Our community partnerships continue to grow. Provided in your packet are a few letters from leaders in our community that the HRC has had the privilege of working with in 2018. These relationships continue to be enriched, and we continue to look for opportunities to gain new individuals and organizations as we work to eliminate discrimination in our city. I have participated in many community events, from standing out on Wabash Avenue during First Friday activities to resource and service fairs to help promote the work of the HRC. I've been able to spend a lot of time with the children, teachers, and staff in our Vigo County School Corporation. I have started clubs at Terre Haute North and Sarah Scott Middle School. We continue to sponsor the second grade diversity writing contest. I have given presentations to JAG and human service classes at Terre Haute North about the work of the HRC and presented on diversity and inclusion activities. Hamilton Center and I teamed up to provide mental health first aid training to students and staff at Terre Haute North, Terre Haute South, and West Vigo High School. 72 students and 43 adults received that training. I spent the summer in camp environments providing age-appropriate diversity and inclusion programming and plan to go back and do so again this summer. So, as you probably can hear, I could talk to you all evening about the connections and the collaborations that take place between the HRC, other local government departments, community partners, and service agencies, but I realize that you have an agenda of your own to get to this evening. I have given you a few examples of some of the activities that I've been up to in 2018 in your handout. I've also provided you with some details on some upcoming events the Human Relations Commission is involved in, so you can get them on your calendar and hopefully make plans to attend. I do appreciate your time this evening, and I look forward to serving the city in 2019, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Melissa. Anyone have a question for Melissa? Yeah.
Melissa, I have a few questions. How has the move to City Hall impacted people knowing that you're here and services that you offer? Has that been a positive, or do you feel like it's maybe we could have more than one location? I'm just curious how the City Hall move has been for you.
I think the City Hall move has been wonderful. Not only have I gained the support of other departments, I get access to leadership a lot quicker being here. So when a problem occurs, I can have a response and an answer much quicker than being across town. Just not having to drive and fight that train 2 or 3 times a day has been great. I get a lot of foot traffic on Tuesdays and Thursdays because that's when we have big court days. So a lot of just random traffic kind of stops in and sees what I'm up to. So it's been a very positive move and a lot better for my physical safety, I believe, as well. I do a lot of evening and weekend work here at City Hall when others might not be present, and I come in and out and kind of come and go. I'm a one-person circus, so safety I feel a lot safer being in this building.
Good. And then you had mentioned being a one-person show. Could you, how many people in your staff, people might not realize all the work that you've done and might not realize how big your department is. So could you kind of explain that to some of the people in here, and especially Dave Taylor and the media, so they understand as well?
Yeah, so I do have a volunteer commission that's made up of 7 individuals. And the only paid staff for the Human Relations Commission is me. So most of that work is done by me.
Okay. And then you had mentioned the homeless shelter thing that you've been working on with some of the county leaders. What do you feel is the biggest challenge that we're facing to be able to have a heating and cooling station in our community?
I think the biggest challenge is this needs to be a community action plan. So everybody kind of plays a role in the health and safety of our most vulnerable neighbors. And so I think it is identifying all of those puzzle pieces and then having those that can actually help put those puzzle pieces together and having them then take that responsibility. When we had this really cold snap this winter, we did have a lot of social organizations and community members gather around to provide shelter for these people. If we had an emergency response plan where everybody already knew what the plan was, they would still give the food, the warming centers, the Vigo County Public Library could provide things for people to do instead of trying to keep people warm.
Right.
So I think it really just involves identifying the puzzle pieces and then putting those pieces together.
And just, it breaks my heart that we're behind with regards to that. Where are we in relations to other communities our size with not having any place like that?
There are a lot of other communities that we have researched that are our size that have that plan in place. So what happens is they put up a white flag. The individuals that need to seek shelter know what that white flag means. They have very definite parameters before raising that white flag, so there's no scrambling around trying to find shelter, trying to get transportation for these people to get to that shelter, to provide food, to provide activities, to provide beds. So we really are far behind other communities.
Okay. I appreciate everything you do, Melissa. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else, Todd?
Melissa, thank you very much for updating us. I'm looking at your 2018 scorecard that you referred to, and without going into great detail, I see that there's a section for the county and a section for the city. We're doing pretty well, or in some ways pretty well in the city. But I guess my question is, after looking down these categories where we're getting zeros, things like non-discrimination in city employment, that seems like something that we should be doing. Are we not already doing that? And like the public notices that we put in the newspaper every year about being an employer that doesn't discriminate, or is it something else?
So there's a whole lot of different categories and components that you have to meet, and I've started taking the webinars that the MEI does provide so that I can have a better understanding, because this is kind of my first rodeo with this type of material. But it's just the way that the policies are written and what do we do kind of outside of those policies. So, for example, like the trans-inclusive health care benefits. We're working on trying to do that right now. So there are some things that we're trying to do that just kind of provides some different things. And one of those non-description in city employment, that means that we don't have gendered bathrooms too. So that we would just have open, non-gendered bathrooms in municipal buildings. So I mean, there's a lot of different requirements to gain points in some of those categories. But I think that we can still do it.
I see a whole separate, like, opportunity for points for non-gendered bathrooms, so that's a redundancy. It's in a couple of different places.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I heard you say also that we went up 10 points. Is that because of the LGBTQ police liaison?
Yes.
Task force? Good.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when Chief Classy was Chief Classy and not Sheriff Classy, he thought it would be a good idea for him to perform in that capacity. So it really is, if anybody is having some problems in the LGBTQ community, they have a safe ear to talk to as it pertains to law enforcement. Historically, there has been a divide between those in the LGBTQ community and law enforcement, and so a safe person that they can go to and talk to. And so we are working with Chief Keene to see how that's going to change now that Chief Classy is sheriff.
And last question. Looking at all of this, my instinct is that there are things that this council could do to help strengthen your position, our collective position with regards to these issues. Do you have any specific suggestions for us legislatively for things that we should be trying to incorporate into our code or our rules that would strengthen our score and give you the help that you need?
And there are some activities that maybe I would like to talk about at another time when I have the really good language behind them. But one of the things that they are also seeking is if the LGBTQ community provides any kind of resource fair, pride event. I know that ISU is getting ready to do their Drop of Lavender this weekend. If you support and participate in those activities and then willing to publicly announce that via the website, your social media accounts, to show that the City Council of Terre Haute supports the activities of the LGBTQ community. That is one big way that we get points. Okay. And when I was talking about the language behind the other, some of that is that we have a member of the council who is openly in the LGBTQ community, and I don't know if that's appropriate to even ask.
Yeah, I saw that on the list too, and
Yeah.
I saw that we get 0 points for it now.
But again, I don't know that that's anything that's really within our control, nor should it be.
Thank you, I yield.
Anyone else in council?
Melissa, I'd just like to thank you for this, and really appreciate the work that you're doing. I know I've been fortunate to attend a couple of events that you have put forward on behalf of the city this year, and I know you're working really hard to improve our situation with regard to human rights in our city. I would just echo kind of the questions that Todd asked you, and if there are those specific things that you identify as you're going along, please let me know this year or other council people know so that we can move to assist you in those areas.
All right, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any reports from the Board of Public Works and Safety? Oh. Let me interrupt you just first here, Michelle. I just want to say that as there's been no, just as an announcement, we will have a meeting on March 14th, but at this point there's no, and there will be none because it's missed the statutory requirements for filing, there's no new business scheduled for council on the 14th. Depending on what happens with other issues on the agenda tonight, some of those could be held over to the 14th, but just wanted to make that announcement. So, any reports from the Public Board of Works and Safety?
There are none.
From standing committees?
There are none.
From non-standing committees?
There are none.
Items previously tabled?
There are none.
Tax abatements for confirmation?
There are none.
Items on second reading? We do have one item on second reading, which I'll let Michelle get to here shortly, but I do need to make a couple of changes on the agenda before that. We do need to consider Special Ordinance 1, which you'll find on the second part of your agenda, before Special Ordinance 2, because they are tied together. So we will move that forward now in front of Special Ordinance 2. And Special Ordinance 1 will come first. At least the numbers cooperate on that. And also, we are going to move General Ordinance 2 to the end of the agenda. So for those of you who are here for those items, those two changes have been made. So, Michelle, next item of business.
Special Ordinance 1, 2019, vacating of east-west public alley located north of Locust Street, south of First Avenue, west of 15th Street, and east of 14th Street. No problems were noted.
Madam President, members of the council, my name is Lou Britton, I'm representing the petition of Wabash Valley Health Center. Just to orient you a bit, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Wabash Valley Health Center, the St. Anthony School building on Locust Street. They presently occupy the properties shown in yellow here. This is the old St. Anthony School.
St. Anne.
St. Anne. Glad somebody's on it.
I'm an alum.
Yeah, the hospital's way down here. These properties, these three properties were recently acquired. The redevelopment department demolished the improvements that are shown on these properties, and they're just taking lots of stuff. This is their current parking lot in addition to this property. The rest of this property over to 14th Street is owned by the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, and that will all become significant as we proceed through this. The St. Anne Medical Clinic was established in 1997 and operated out of the former St. Anne School building, providing services one afternoon a week as a people's clinic. The dental clinic opened in 2005. The facility was then incorporated in 2011 as Wabash Valley Health Center, and received funding through a federal grant program as a federally qualified health center in 2013. The Wabash Valley Health Center serves all ages and accepts most insurance, including Medicare and Medicaid. A sliding fee scale is available, and no person is denied services based on their ability to pay at that facility. They provide a comprehensive array of services, including primary health care, dental care, behavioral health care, and outreach. The facility employs 35 persons. Since 2015, the Wabash Valley Health Center has made capital investments of over $465,000 in its facility. the health facility is planning a major expansion and renovation of the former St. Anne's building. They had considered constructing or locating a second facility, but decided to expand at their existing facility. The current facility is operating at near capacity. The project involves construction of a 3,200 square foot expansion, as well as major interior and exterior enhancements of the existing facility. They will include expanded waiting room capacity, improved patient privacy throughout the clinic, additional medical exam rooms, additional external signage, and a denture lab. The estimated cost of this project is $3,483,000. The reason we're here tonight is we have two things before you. One is a vacation of an existing alleyway, which is very important for this project. The alleyway to be vacated is shown in blue here. It runs all the way on this photo from the side street over to the end point of the property line here. As a part of that vacation, we recognize that we don't want dead-end alleys. The healthcare center will dedicate a new strip for use as an alleyway along this side of the parking lot, which is represented in yellow here. We have spoken with the city attorney, and you always have a bit of a chicken and an egg problem with something like this. We don't want to dedicate the alley if we don't get the alley vacated. You don't want to vacate the alley if we don't get a dedication. So what we have concluded the best way to proceed would be that if the council approves the vacation will not be recorded and therefore not effective until we have furnished the dedication to the city. And at this point, we believe we'll do that at the Board of Public Works meeting on the 25th. So after the 25th, assuming the dedication is accepted by the Board of Works, we can then go ahead and record the vacation and proceed with the project. Part of the reason that this is so important to the project is that this is the current entrance to the facility, which is located on the east side of the old St. Anne's School. This is a drawing showing, I guess what I refer to now as the rear of the St. Anne's School. This would be the alley back here. They're going to have a new patient entrance on the back, and this would be the new 3,200 square foot addition. They will, as part of that, be rerouting, changing their parking configuration and rerouting access to the building so that access will not come through here, but rather, here's the new entrance, here's the addition. Traffic would be routed off of First Avenue and could make drop-offs for patients here and have patient parking in this area. This area over here would be primarily for overflow patient parking and employees. But the vacation of this alley is essential to having a safe patient flow through this area. The alley will be blocked here and blocked over here. Since the archdiocese owns both sides of the alley, the vacated part of the alley here would revert to the archdiocese. The archdiocese joined in the vacation petition. They are satisfied with the vacation petition and in fact encourage it. That will allow them to combine the use of all of this property. This property is currently vacant. This property is a residential dwelling. These buildings are just storage facilities. As a part of the project, also for the benefit of the archdiocese, we'll be making substantial improvements, both to the entrance to this parking area now, which is really about this wide and not, you can have cars going willy-nilly in and out of there. So they'll improve that entrance and improve the parking area. for the residential facility. The other piece that needs to be resolved is the rezoning. The facility is currently zoned C2, which is suitable zoning for a healthcare facility. However, the 3 lots which were recently acquired are still zoned R1. And a part of this project will require the current east wall of the school sits right about here. It's within literally feet, a couple of feet, of the property line here. Might show up better. Yeah. So as you can see, the building and the property line are basically coincident. They will be acquiring 1 lot plus 2 feet of the next lot from the Archdiocese in order to construct the addition. The new property line will be over here. So, since we're not acquiring this full lot, just 2 feet of it, we had to have subdivision approval to convey less than a whole lot, but we also have to get a rezoning of this lot and these lots. That rezoning was approved unanimously by the Area Plan Commission at their meeting last night with no remonstrators. I don't believe that there's anything more. We did have to get a variance from the setback because of a technicality with the zoning ordinance, but that was approved by the BZA at their meeting on Wednesday morning. So other than that, there are enough moving parts here to keep us all fairly well confused. But at this point, the only thing we're down to is the vacation and the rezoning, and I would appreciate a favorable vote from the council. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If I can't, Charles Welker, the CEO of Wabash Valley Healthcare, is here as well.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on Special Ordinance 1, 2019?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Again, Donald Hyde, I've listened carefully to what was said, as you did. I can notice that too, by the way. But I didn't hear one thing that would be important for what they have there. What they have is one fine place. I have no problem with that. However, I didn't hear how they plan to get ambulances in and out of the place in case of emergencies. If you're going to block off that alley could be turned into a street or a miniature street so that ambulances could get in and out in a hurry. It is going to be bigger than it was. I know for a fact that years ago, I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance from that very building. I got news for you. It was no fun ride. Now, if you're going to improve the thing, then I suggest you improve the way to get an ambulance in and out quicker. I'd like to hear his comment on that, or if they're even planning that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone, would you like to respond to that, Lou?
Certainly. The project was designed to accommodate in this traffic flow pattern at the back an ambulance by the architects and engineers, and the fire department has approved this approach for ambulance use.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to comment on Special Ordinance 1? Council?
President Cusson,
Yes.
just a reminder, on Special Ordinance 1, you need to have a vote to take action. Special Ordinance 2, you do not need to do that.
And for the public, the reason for that is that one's an item on first hearing and one's an item on second hearing. So, Councilperson.
Yes, I have a business conflict and will be abstaining from any discussion and vote on
Thank you
this
for,
issue.
thank you for letting us know that. Anyone else? on
Madam
council?
President, go ahead. I'm just going to make a motion. Oh, okay.
Councilperson Aiken.
Lou, thanks for describing all this to us. When I look at the map, it all makes sense to me, but I've got to ask, there's a great big blank corner there to the north of Bethany House, across the alley at the corner of First Avenue and 14th Street. Do you know if the Archdiocese of Indianapolis has any plans for that property?
I do.
Okay. Just for what it's worth, I'm very familiar with this building. I went there for first through eighth grades, and I was part of the St. Anne community before the Archdiocese of Indianapolis designed it out of our local mix. I've been very proud and pleased with what's happened at the Wabash Valley Health Center over the last few years, and I think that this is great. I'd love to see this facility expanding, and applaud the good work that's being done there. I yield.
Anyone else on council have comments?
Madam President,
Yes, Councilperson Harrison.
thanks, Lou, for presenting this, and Charlie for all your work on this. I do think this is an exciting expansion and will provide additional quality health care in our community. I would like to make a motion for the council that we approve, or at least vote on this on its first reading, Special Ordinance 1, 2019.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we vote on this matter this evening. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Madam President,
Councilperson.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Special Ordinance 1, 2019 as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Councilperson Garrison, seconded by Councilperson Morris, that we approve Special Ordinance 1, 2019. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Matter carries.
Thank you.
Next item.
Special Ordinance 2, 2019, rezoning of property located at 1412, 1421, and 1425 First Avenue. Area planning gave a favorable with conditions recommendation.
Mr. Britton, I assume you've already told us a lot about this. Is there
I told you
anything
everything I know.
Well,
About
that's,
virtually everything.
that's really something, so, thank you. Are there any questions, or anybody from the public that would like to comment about Special Ordinance 2, 2019? And this is the rezoning part of the ordinance. Seeing none, is there anyone on council who has a comment or question?
Madam President,
Yes, Councilperson Aller.
if there's no further questions. I move that we approve Special Ordinance 2, 2019 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilperson Aller and seconded by Councilperson Garrison that we approve Special Ordinance 2, 2019. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Lou, I'd just like to echo what Todd said. I used to represent a lot of folks with medical concerns, and one of the few places in the community they could go to was the then St. Anne's Health Clinic, and I think it's really a wonderful thing that it's growing and helping more people.
It took a huge leap of faith to start it.
I know.
By a group of folks, and certainly will.
Yeah, so good luck with that project. I know it'll be a great addition to our community. Next item of business.
Special Ordinance 4, 2019, rezoning of property located at 3141 and 3181 North 25th Street. Area planning gave a favorable with conditions recommendation.
Petitioner.
Jeff Lynn Law Firm here for Scott's Custom Colors. I also have with me Scott McDaniel, owner. We are here asking for a rezoning of a parcel of real estate across the street from Scott's auto body repair shop. The purpose or need for the rezoning is he needs more space to store vehicles in need of repair, and then a place to store them after they've been repaired and waiting for customer pickup. And this, we're asking from C2 to M1. That's the least restrictive zoning classification that allows outside storage. Because of residential north and residential south. It's C2 to the northeast and it's C2 to the south and M2 to the west. But because there is adjacent R1, it'll need 8-foot fencing, it'll be opaque, and he's more than happy to do just that. We spoke to city engineering. They want a professional site plan with professional drainage. If the rezoning is approved before the construction's done, Scott's spoken to and will engage Mike Walbeezer for those purposes. City engineering did want the entranceway to be paved, in that way any gravel is not brought back out onto the 25th Street. And I'm sorry, this is 25th Street and Prairie Avenue. I'd be happy to take any questions, and anything I cannot answer, Scott could surely address.
And this is approved by,
Yes, no opposition, and it was unanimous approval, that area plan. Yes.
is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on Special Ordinance 4, 2019? Anyone, okay, anyone from council have questions or comments?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilperson.
I would just like to say that it's enlightening to see a business at the north end expanding more and needing more room, and Scott's has been a good customer up north, and we're very happy for this. So if there's no further questions, I would
We have to vote on this.
vote on this.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilperson Moore, seconded by Councilperson Nasser, that we vote on Special Ordinance 4, 2019. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mrs. President,
Yes, Councilperson.
I move that Special Ordinance 4 be approved.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilperson Morris and seconded by Councilperson Nasser that we approve Special Ordinance 4, 2019. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Next item of business?
Special Ordinance 5, 2019, rezoning of property located at 4017, 4051, and 4069 East Margaret Drive. Area planning tabled this, so the council cannot take action. It will be back on our agenda April 4th, 2019.
Thank you. Next item of business?
Special Ordinance 6, 2019, vacating a portion of a north-south public alley located south of Buckeye Street, west of Lafayette Avenue, and east of 11th Street. No problems were noted.
Is there
Is Mrs. Cooper here? It is your turn, ma'am.
Please state your name and your address if you would, ma'am.
My name is Georgia Cooper. We own an antique and music store at 1146 Lafayette Avenue. And in behind our building is an alley that no longer exists. And I'd like to have that vacated off our property.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on Special Ordinance 6, 2019?
Just to clarify, they're requesting the section of alley that is behind their business to be vacated. It is on the map, but it is not actually used as an alley. So currently, they have their parking lot over it.
So it wouldn't be recognized as an alley if we drove up there. Thank you. Council.
Madam President, if there's no other questions, I make a motion, we take action on Special Ordinance 6, 2019.
It's been moved by Councilperson Nasser, seconded by Councilperson Devon, that we take action on Special Ordinance 6 tonight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam President,
Councilperson Nasser.
I make a motion that we approve Special Ordinance 6, 2019 as presented.
It's been moved by Councilperson Nasser, seconded by Councilperson Devon, that we approve Special Ordinance 6, 2019 this evening. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The matter is approved. Next item of business.
Review of Warren Village CF1 form. You have copies before you. This was originally approved in 2016, and it was a multi-phase project that shows an estimated completion date of December 1st, 2019. I don't believe the whole entire project has been completed. There was a letter included with their correspondence, and it will state they're still expecting to finish everything in 2019. But they've been very great filing their CF1 forms annually on what has been completed. And there should be one other. They were only estimating one employee, but considerable value cost on on this project. And so doing a comparison on the employees, as you typically do, may be hard to do right now, but the project still has, they expected to construct 38 units on scattered sites. It was delayed 12 months because of issues with tax credits, and they are increasing it to 40 units, but again, they have not completed it. The council has the options to state that they are in substantial compliance or they are not in substantial compliance. If you vote for in substantial compliance, it continues for 1 year. If you vote for not in substantial compliance, a hearing will be held.
So Michelle, basically, they're just behind schedule. Is that what we're saying here?
They had some issues with the state of Indiana getting tax credits because it's considered low-income housing, so yes, they're behind, but they still have time to complete their project because they gave an original completion date of December of 2019.
And they've been very good at
They're the first to file their forms every year.
And on our green handout, here's that letter that Michelle referred to is on the back. We're looking for that. So, yeah, I just happened to spot it.
I like the green paper too, by the way.
So it looks like
Don had a few issues with the copier. He learned a lesson.
It's very helpful, actually, tonight. So.
It's already the color of trees. Love it.
So it's fair to say, Michelle, that they're moving forward with the project, just not moving forward as rapidly as they had hoped.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council?
Madam President?
Yes, Councilperson.
Michelle, can you remind us when the clock starts on their 10 years of abatement?
Well, this one's going to be an interesting one because you had really never granted this type of abatement before.
Yep.
So, without getting into huge amounts of details, the abatement is only applied to the increase in assessed value above what the assessed value was at the time the abatement supposedly began. So if the abatement only increased $30,000, you're not going to have anything abated. If the abatement, if the assessed value increased $300,000, then they would get an abatement on that. So I'm not sure technically how to answer your question because the project isn't completed. So another aspect that's different on this abatement is the fact that it's so many sites.
Yep.
So one site would not get more than 10 years, but the whole project may be longer than 10 years because they each parcel cannot have an assessed value increase until the project is completed on that parcel.
Got it.
So overall, it may be longer than 10 years.
So if they finish their project by December of this year, then presumably all of the parcels have been improved to the extent that they're going to be improved. So
I would
10 years from now, from 2019.
Well, I would state that some of the projects maybe have already been completed. I have not reviewed that yet. So those abatements were on vacant land, I do believe.
Okay.
So the assessed value would have increased, so the tax abatement for that parcel. Remember, they did 15 parcels ranging from 3rd Avenue, Buckeye Street, Elm Street, Kent, Locust, 17th. So each one would have a new assessed value. So it's going to be longer than 10 years overall, but not longer than 10 years on each parcel.
Okay, so some that start this year will be 10 years, and then others that are improved like next year or at the end of this year So the whole thing might stretch out to 11 or 12 years is what you're saying?
But not for each parcel, correct?
But 10 years with a little bit at the beginning in one direction, a little bit at the end in the other direction. Okay, I understand. Based on our experience with trying to administer this complicated piece of legislation, do you have any suggestions for how we might approach future requests like this?
Very
understand that
cautiously, so,
you can punt and say that you'll think about it and send us an email or something, but
I'll do that. I will state that I hope the next time this type of project comes before you, you hesitate, because trying to figure out the end dates is going to be very, very hard, but you also did not want 15 tax abatements filed for the same overall project.
right.
So, be cautious. That's, consider allowing one filing fee for the whole entire project. I would hate to see somebody file 15 abatements and pay $500 each. But if they were filed individually, it would be a lot easier to keep track of. But I don't want anybody to pay that much in filing fees.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm asking the question, not so much because of the filing fees, but because of the difficulty of tracking the timeline for each of the properties, knowing how much to abate each year. It's, I can see that it's going to be a complicated thing. And also, I wouldn't want to burden the people doing the project with 15 SB1s every year, because that's the other thing. We have to do it 15 times instead of once.
If another one comes up, my quick answer, and of course the city attorney may disagree with me, but my quick answer is suggest to them that they send a more detailed letter with their filings each year saying this project, the abatement went on at this date and it will expire here. Mm-hmm. Have them provide us with the information instead of us going and looking for the information.
And then we just verify it from year to year by comparing what they said the year before at the beginning. That sounds very rational. Okay, thanks. I yield.
Anyone else on council? So I think you mentioned this. I just wanted to verify it that we have had, though, in the past from the Warren Village folks, they've been very forthcoming with information and filing. So I think this isn't always the case, but we can trust that we are getting the information from them, that this information.
They always provide more information than you've asked for.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Madam President?
Yes.
We do need to act on this tonight, right? With that in mind, if there's no further discussion, I move that we find Warren Village in substantial compliance.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilperson Nation and seconded by Councilperson Aller that we find the CF1 form for Warren Village in substantial compliance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Found in substantial compliance. Thank you very much. Next item of business.
General Ordinance 2, 2019, amending City Code, Chapter 6, Article 4, Division 2, Animal Control Regulations.
Mr. Felling, petitioner.
Council, Eddie Felling, City Attorney. General Ordinance 2 is really a compilation of approximately 12 months, if not longer, between work in my office and the Animal Control Commission. That's a board that's established by this council. We worked through several meetings, several proposals, and this 30-page document's really an update of the animal control ordinance as a whole. I would point out, I know there may be some questions and discussions on several items here this evening. The primary changes you'll find in this document, number one, really on the first page, is a more succinct definition of your agricultural animals. As you move through the document, one of the bigger changes you'll notice, and I know the Tribune pointed it out very, very clearly, is the requirements for animal care with regard to heat, cold, and shelter requirements. And then as we get towards the end of the document, one of the most noticeable changes or proposed additions has to do with permitting beekeeping within the city limits. I understand there's a lot here. I understand there may be a lot of questions here this evening. I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. I believe we have all of our code enforcement office here this evening. I asked them to be here with us to help explain how some of these changes came about. As I think we've made it clear, one of the ultimate goals with the changes that are in this document is to help make these folks' jobs easier with regard to the enforcement. I know they work hard and are quite frankly understaffed. To give the council another general idea, we deal with a couple hundred code enforcement violations each month. Vast majority of those do not have to do with animal control, but I do know that that is a large portion of what these officers do on a daily basis. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions, and I have them here as well to help field anything that might be pertinent to what they actually do on the ground.
Thank you, Eddie, and I want to also thank our code enforcement people for being here. I just want to say before we have people from the public speak on this, that I am going to refer this matter to committee because we've already had a lot of input from public and from city personnel on this, so we want to take a little closer look on it before we take action on it. So what that means is that the committee that we're going to refer to is the Traffic, Public Safety, and Special Health and Welfare Committee. Councilperson Aller is the chair of that committee, and she is working with our city attorney and others to set those meetings up. They will be publicized, and they will be open to the public. So you may also be at those meetings, should you choose to be, or you can also provide input to council prior to those meetings if they are at such a time that you can't be present, that you are concerned about something. So just before we take testimony, we'll take care of all the details of that after we've taken testimony. I know some of you have come tonight specifically to speak on this issue, and so we do want to give you that opportunity. But knowing that we're not going to take action on it, certainly not tonight, not this month, probably we will be pushing that down the road at least a month. Councilwoman Aller, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, with that being said, just go ahead and get some housekeeping, I guess, out of the way. The members on that board are Councilman Garrison, Councilman Elliott, Councilman Morris, and Councilman DeBon. We're speaking with the city attorney and some of the others. They've gave me some dates. I think I've got 3 dates here. I've got a 3/14 at 5 o'clock. I got a 3/19 at 2 o'clock. And then I think we could possibly do a 3/18 at 5 o'clock too. So out of those 3 dates, whatever works good for the committee members, if they want to toss out a date, so we can go ahead and set the meeting while we're at a public meeting where everyone is fully aware.
14 works for me better than the other 2.
The 14th at 5 o'clock, that would have been, that's next week, right before our regular meeting.
What day is that?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
It'd be like right before our regular meeting at 5 o'clock. I thought that'd be a good time because we're already scheduled to be here on a Thursday, it would just be a little bit earlier time. And it will be held here in the city courtroom. For recording purposes, it records better in here than it does in the Board of Works, so that was another conflict of trying to get it in here. So.
I would also think that the 14th would be a good day for me as well.
Good.
That's good.
Okay. Michelle, do I need a motion and a second? Nope. So let's set it for 3/14 at 5 o'clock in the City Hall courtroom.
Point of information. Yes. Eddie, can you speak to whether or not people who are not, council members who are not on the committee can attend this legally?
How many members are on the committee?
4. 5 total.
5 total.
It'll be
If I may, the meeting will be, I'll do an announcement to the meet.
It will be a public meeting. Yes, I would just caution the council members that are not part of the committee to be more of an audience participant as opposed to a committee person participant.
But we can be there.
I don't see any reason. As long as it's a public meeting, you've already got a majority of the council there anyway.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
And I know that some of the committee meetings, some of them are just the council, and some of them are council, and we take public comment. I will allow public comment.
Right.
Just so everybody's within reason, so we can have everybody's comments in.
Yes, I appreciate that, and for the public, just so you'll know, we are kind of establishing a committee process here as we go. We haven't had our committees meeting much over many years, and we recently have had a committee meet on another issue, and so this will be our second, and we're sort of getting through it, but I think one of the things one of the reasons we're having this is that we know there are a lot of people in the public who are interested in it. So we want to make sure that we give it, that we make as good a law as possible with this ordinance. So getting more input on that and having more time to discuss it. Sometimes when we're at these meetings and we're looking at it a little bit on the fly, we haven't had a lot of time to study it. It's a little dicey. So I appreciate Councilwoman Aller's announcement about that. So that's scheduled. Is there anything else regarding the meeting? I think so. Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak tonight on this matter? And please identify yourself and your address.
Good evening, council members. My name is Tabby Carroll. I'm one of the 4-H and youth development educators here in Vigo County with Purdue Extension, and I live at 1760 Crabtree Court, Terre Haute, 47803. I'm also an entomologist, a beekeeper, and I live here in the city. After reading about your proposed changes to the General Ordinance 2, I have some concerns regarding the new section involving beekeeping. As an entomologist by trade, I understand the importance of proper beekeeping health and practices. While most of the section seems pretty straightforward and pretty understandable, I find issue with letter C, specifically with numbers 4 and 5. Number 4 states that lots having less than 10,000 square feet shall not have more than 4 hives. So if that lot were a square, it'd be 100 feet by 100 feet. That's not an unreasonable request. However, number 5, directly below it, states that no hives shall be located within 75 feet of any property line, public street, sidewalk, or alley. So if I'm to keep my hives no less than 75 feet from a property line, I can't keep one hive on a piece of property that's 10,000 square feet, let alone 4. A hive placed in the center of a 100 by 100 square foot lot would be 50 feet from all property lines. Furthermore, I don't think it's very feasible for many urban beekeepers to keep their hives 75 feet from the property lines. Most properties in Terre Haute would not allow for that clearance. As an avid beekeeper, I can attest to a sting here and there, none of them without me deserving them, but nothing that would suggest 75 feet as a buffer was needed around the hive. Bees are a lot more docile than people would believe, and I can push mow my entire backyard all the way up to the hive without any interference from the bees. They have a flight pattern to their different food sources, and that changes throughout the year based on what's flowering in the area. They generally fly up to 2 miles from the hive, but they've been known to fly as far as 5 miles to reach a food source. And when they leave the hive, they fly up and not out. Their goal is to avoid obstacles in their path to the flowers, so they're trying to avoid people's cars and homes. They generally don't fly at the level that people would be walking. It's very unlikely that bees will even forage directly in the neighboring properties, as the minimum distance that they can communicate to other bees in the hive through dancing is 150 feet. The bees that I have kept have never been an issue for my neighbors on any side of my property. If you look to other Indiana cities with beekeeping legislation, you can find that Valparaiso and Lafayette suggest a 10-foot buffer, while Fort Wayne suggests a 5-foot buffer. I'm sure that Lafayette would have consulted the entomology department at Purdue before making these recommendations. 5 to 10 feet sounds fairly reasonable, and even proposing that hives should face away from neighboring properties if 10 feet is not attainable is not unheard of. There are some instances of city ordinances that recommend a fly zone barrier, such as a fence, if the 10-foot buffer cannot be met. As an example, my hive sits 2 feet from the property line, but at the property line there is a fence and the bees face into my property, so they're not flying out over my neighbor's property. In 4-H, our slogan is to learn by doing, and we have many kids in Vigo County that participate in the beekeeping project, and many more still who are interested in beekeeping but don't have the funding, the time, or the housing accommodations to keep a hive. For those kids, I think it's important for them to be able to experience beekeeping, and I would love to teach workshops at my house where I can show them the joys of beekeeping, let them experience a hive. But if this legislation were to pass, I wouldn't be able to keep my bees in my backyard. Again, I understand the reasoning behind these rules. I just think that they're a little aggressive, and I appreciate that our council is trying to make a better city. And I thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts, and I'd be happy to help with any entomology questions if you guys have them.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anyone? Yes, you might be helpful at that meeting if you can't attend.
Can I ask,
Sure.
where did we get our 75 feet decision?
So a couple things. Number one, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Our model was almost entirely, I believe, taken from Indianapolis's metropolitan ordinance, if I remember correctly. I cannot state with any certainty that that $75 feet requirement came from that directly, if at all.
I was just curious. I mean,
yeah,
and seems to be the expert.
One thing to be clear, and again, I know there may be a lot of questions here this evening. I think the committee would be a great time to help field some of those as well, maybe as opposed to this meeting here this evening. It's been really the opinion of my office when the questions of these come up, that they are really not technically allowed pursuant to the current code section. So to say that what you have now may not currently be allowed under the new code, I think is a little bit incorrect from my standpoint anyway. But yes, we'd be happy to reconsider that. I would want to consult our animal control officers as well. But that was modeled off the Indianapolis model.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak?
Donald Hyde, 1411 Poplar Street. You guys, for once, are considering something that you and you alone have the power to do. You are going to write, whether I agree with it or not, whether anybody agrees with it or not, you're going to write the new animal thing. I have several feelings about this. I don't understand why nothing's been done for 10 years. I'd like to know when the 10-year period came into being, and then when they replaced the one 10 years ago, what was the one they replaced? How old was that? And the reason I say this is I read the newspaper article, and it raised up 4 or 5 actually disturbing questions. And I hope you people will really, really study this, because you're going to take out yet another big hole in the safety net of this county. And I have a problem with that. I really do. I cannot think of anything that directly affects the county of Vigo than animals, good and bad, but mostly good. I don't want you to continually raise the price of the cost of keeping animals, especially cats and dogs, especially the animals that effectively could be used to help the poorest of the poor have some company. We have in this city, in this county, a terrible, terrible problem with depression at all age levels. And I'm going to tell you from personal knowledge, not just me, but of others, and time working from young all the way to now with people. Animals have the ability to teach compassion. Animals have the ability to relieve depression better than drugs. Now, what reason I point this out, and I'm being confusing right now, and I'm sorry, is this. Go back 20 years ago, and how much did it cost to buy a dog or a cat? How much did it cost to get the dog and cat to a veterinarian? Now, come forward the last 20 years, and those prices have gone through the roof. And so a lot of the kids that could really use an animal, they can't afford them no more. A lot of parents will buy dogs and cats at Christmas time or birthdays, and then suddenly they can't keep affording because costs go up. So they get rid of them. We have a large, and I can tell you this firsthand knowledge, but we have a large population of stray dogs and cats, especially the poor cats. And these are not old alley cats like they used to be, that are mixed breed and, wow. These are cats that have been abandoned, that are full-blooded cats. I can't believe what I know some people paid for dogs and cats, and then they abandoned them, and they become wild. Now, the reason I point this out is I've got a few wild cats I feed. I do it out of compassion for the animals. I can't afford a lot of medical things, so I keep them safe because I can't afford to fix them. But when they get hurt, I fix them. I don't think I'm alone. I think there's a lot of elderly people. I think there's a lot of other citizens that do the same thing. And I'm worried that you guys are going to pass rules and regulations that's going to take it down to where fewer and fewer people are going to be able to properly care for the animals. I mean, it's already hard for the poor and the working class to do it anyway. And when you do that, you get more and more cats abandoned, more and more dogs abandoned, more and more strays. That's one point. The second point, man, am I a little upset with this group of what animals you can keep in Vigo County in the city of Terre Haute. This town once that started at Fort Harrison, I'll go Fort Harrison, and it ended at Margaret Avenue. And the city limit went all the way out to Deming Park and the Wabash River. Everything except there was still part of Harrison Township that was country where they could have farms. And slowly but surely, we've ate it all up to where there's very little of Harrison Township that was once country that's still country. No, it's all city. Now, mind you, it's city limits, you say, but you go out. I can go to dozens of farms north, more than dozens of farms east, and south, good Lord. Yeah, you got to wonder where the city ends and where the farms and the townships begin. And yet you want to say what the animals are. And the third thing I want to bring out is who's making up the list of what you can keep. And I wonder if you're going to do what the schools have done. And again, with the 4-H people, I really, really worry about it now. I didn't even worry about it that much till they pointed that out. What I mean by that is, are you going to make exceptions for the fairgrounds? Make exceptions for our city parks. And the reason I say this is I am getting real tired of the city and the county not getting hold of animals and then having a day set aside, a camp out, a park opening, where they'll bring a city or a group will bring an animal and show it to the kids, show it to the people. Educate the people on the proper care of animals and what different animals there are, like those alpacas. I love an alpaca. Do I ever see an alpaca? No. West Terre Haute's got them. A few people on farms got them. You're going to make an ordinance saying you can't have an alpaca at all in the city at all? Well, I think a rich man could take you on and win that case. But the bottom line is, I'm upset with you for not making it possible for groups to provide a way to show those animals. And I can't remember. I can tell you this. I've been to every county fair from 1968 to 2000. And I've been to a few since then. And the ones I can remember are the ones where a giraffe showed up several times.
Mr. Hyde, the county fair is really not subject to this ordinance, so could you
Well, no,
move on with
but
your
I'm
other
saying,
comments?
I want you to make sure when you read this, and I'm talking to all 9 of you, and I'm being serious about this, when you write this ordinance, do not eliminate the ability for the city or groups, agencies that work in this city to have the ability to bring an animal to show it to the people. I think that's most unfair. Now,
I
you
could be
want-
wrong, but I doubt that this ordinance affects that sort
All
of
right.
situation.
Well, anyway, I just want to tell you that be careful. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joe Biggs. I live at 4283 East Margaret Drive. My family and I have lived there for 28 years, and I'm surprised I'm going to echo what Mr. Hyde said, but we are part of the area that has been incorporated over the years and now are part of the city limits. When we first moved there 28 years ago, we were not part of the city limits. We have 10 acres. For the past 18 years, we've owned horses at that property and still do. And I apologize, I may be wasting your time because I've not read the ordinance, but I would hope, and maybe I can ask, is there a grandfather opportunity for those who have agricultural animals on property? Go ahead, Mr. Fallon.
I think I can answer this. As long as you're zoned properly, you're going to be able to have agricultural animals. So if you're an ag or I believe open space, so especially out east, if you have 10 acres, I'm guessing it's probably zoned either open or agricultural. So I don't think you'd have any issues.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you. Lisa Spence, 220 Barton Avenue, Terre Haute. I was approached by a coworker this morning who had a question about the ordinance and a comment about the ordinance. Before I could clarify that I'm not a member of the city council, but I did tell him I would be attending tonight, and so I committed to him that I would bring this to you. So I appreciate the fact that you're going to have a public meeting in the committee, and I will share that with him. I hope, because I don't know if he'll be able to attend, if you'll indulge me passing along his question and his comment. His question was about Section 6-78, which has to do with the inspection of animals and premises authorized. His question, and I believe his concern, had to do with the generalized language in that section. He asked me, his question was, did you intend, and this is not a section that's been changed, as far as I can tell, but his question was, did you intend to allow the inspection of animals and premises for only commercial operations, or does this apply to private residences? And I believe from his next comment, he just had a concern about the fact that the issuance of a license seems to allow inspection and there's no designation of a reason necessarily. He did suggest to me in his comment that he would like to, in effect, if there is to be a question, if there's a question about compliance, why are the code enforcement or the officials designated here not required to get a warrant? So I might just ask that you entertain that question and comment, and Councilwoman Aller, I'd be happy to suggest that he reach out to you, since it's going to be discussed at a future date.
Yes.
If I may, real quick, it's regarding kennel licenses.
It is? Okay, is that...
Because if you go before 678, it starts talking about kennel licenses and how you obtain that license.
Is that clear by the change in sections?
There's nothing changing on those.
Right, but I'm saying Section 6-77 talks about kennels, and this is, in defense of my colleague, this is Section 678, which seems to start a whole new topic, if you will. And I think that's...
675 talks about fees, and then 676 talks about appeal, denial, or revocation of license, and 677 discusses obtaining kennel licenses. So I can leave that for the city attorney to review, but 677 talks about kennel licensing.
Right, and I see that. Maybe I'll just leave it at, it's not clear that from that transition that 6-78 is just restricted to kennel operations. I'll just offer that comment based on what he brought to me, perhaps.
And Lisa, If you could, please forward me the email
Yes, Sure, I'll do that.
and his contact information.
Absolutely. And since I have the microphone right now, I would say that I've worked with Officer Tharp a couple of times on matters dealing with cats in the community, and I would second the idea that they need more resources, but also say that every time I've worked with her, I've found her tremendously humane and wanting all the best things. So I really appreciate the job that she does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
Yeah.
President,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
if I could just, yeah, it's
Go ahead. Councilor
pursuant to what
Mason, just a moment, sir.
was just talking about. The way that 678 reads is, "It shall be a condition of the issuance of any license required by this division that the ordinance enforcement authorities of the city shall be permitted to inspect at any time the premises and all animals located thereon, et cetera." As I look forward in this to section 681, I see breeder licenses, section 680, commercial animal establishment license period, commercial animal establishments. So there are multiple licenses, is the point that the city issues. And I think that her colleague is probably right on in his question. Does this need to be more clear, or do we intend it to be so that any license grants them the opportunity to go into the property this way?
Yes, and if you look at 671, even before that, it talks about anyone having owning, keeping, or harboring a cat or dog getting a license. So I do think it's a little bit unclear, and maybe you can take a look at it and give us an opinion about that. That'd be great. Thank you. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Lynn Mullins, I live north side in Terrytown, beekeeper of 8 years in that one spot. I have had as high as actually 12 hives in that, not continuously, because in order to increase our hives, we split them. And so we do have more hives at one time, more than the 4 that you're proposing. And I just want to say, ditto. Many of the things that Tabby offered, I agree with, and was going to comment on as well. Don't need to do that. But I would like to also offer my services when the group gets back together to discuss about the bees.
Well, if you are available on the 14th, I'm sure Amy would appreciate, and the committee would appreciate your comments at that time too as well, and I appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other person from the public who would like to make a comment? Yes.
Yes, very briefly, John Halliday, 1118 North 6th and a half Street. I just wanted to offer my general commendation for all the people who have been involved in drafting General Ordinance 2. It's lengthy, it's complex, raises a number of interesting points, and I think it's well done. So to me, it reads well. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who would like to comment on General Ordinance 2? Council, any other comments right now?
Madam President?
Yes.
I've been contacted by a guy who I've worked with to try to get language about chickens in the city, and his concerns that this proposed ordinance flat out says you cannot have chickens in the city. We can do better than this. That's a backward step from where we are now. And since we have our code enforcement professionals here, I'd like to give them an opportunity to respond to why we don't have chicken language inside this proposed ordinance. Or
If I may, and I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, I've worked with them long enough, between doing the prosecution of the ordinances and working with Lori and her team. One of the primary concerns our code enforcement officers have when dealing with animals is, what do you do when you have an animal that's either lost, neglected, in some state where they would have to remove it from whatever area it's in. And we have had a difficult time. It's expensive for the city to remove, let alone dogs and cats, but we've had instances where we've had a house with 10,000 gerbils in it. What do you do with 10,000 gerbils?
10,000?
I don't know. It was something like hundreds. I don't know, hundreds.
Come on, Eddie, don't exaggerate.
So here's my point.
Gerbils?
Sure you were.
So you can imagine the difficulty that they have, and it's funny to joke about, but really, then what do you do?
Unbelievable.
So the concern we had with chickens, we understand that that's been an ongoing discussion. I understand that's going to be part of our committee discussions. I don't think we can go through that without having that issue addressed. But one of the biggest concerns, without a doubt, is if our code enforcement officers would encounter a loose chicken or a flock, I suppose they are, of chickens that are not being kept in a manner that's sanitary or habitable for the chickens, what do you do with them? Our code enforcement officers aren't getting paid to go out and find houses for these chickens. Of course, it would be wonderful if somebody set up
Does the Humane Shelter accept chickens?
No.
What about gerbils?
Gerbils?
No gerbils. Then you have the rooster.
May I ask what you did with them?
God's just intrigued over here.
She sold them.
And then you have the rooster problem, that's most likely going to be probably the biggest issue we encounter.
I
The
think
more
most
people we see.
of those ordinances that I've seen in other cities, they say that you can't have a rooster.
Correct, and I don't mean to stand up here and debate it today, but invariably, if we allow chickens, more people are going to do it, which there are arguments for and against that, and the likelihood that a rooster is going to end up in the city limits is going to increase. So when we encounter that rooster, we're going to have to do something with it.
Well, I think, if I might just add a comment here, don't mean to cut off the rest of council on this. I also had I think to date, 3 constituents who couldn't be here tonight contact me regarding this, same matter with chickens, and I have asked for all of their permissions to forward their information to Amy. I will be doing that, so that may come up at the committee meetings as well. And, I know on all these issues, there are lots of pros and cons, and we need to consider those. So, again, another reason to have a committee take a look at this before we take any action on it. But that is an issue that I think a lot of people are concerned about as it goes to animal control. And also, I'd just like to say as an aside, complete inappropriate aside, is that if you weren't so young, I would think that you'd just been watching the Star Trek Tribbles episode. So.
I missed that one.
Yeah. But there are other people in the crowd who have watched it.
I feel out of the loop. I'll watch it tonight.
Okay.
Trouble with triples.
Don, you got any more questions?
No,
You seem intrigued about
I'm still
this.
thinking about the gerbils. That's unbelievable.
Is there any other member of the public who'd like, we've kind of gone back and forth tonight. We don't always do that in this way, but this just seemed to lend itself to it. So, yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm in the county, not in the city, and I live at 9341 East Sherwood Grove. I'm his neighbor. But I came in because I did live in the city. I was Lynn's neighbor over in North Terre Haute and wanted chickens and found out there was no ordinance for chickens. Now, I didn't come here to talk about them, but since Todd brought it up, I thought I would come up because we have a lot of youth in the city, and they're restricted to having certain animals that they can take to fair. And I know that the fair people, the Purdue people, struggle with trying to get the youth to be involved with bringing their animals to fair and to exhibiting their animals. And chickens are probably one of the easiest things you can take care of. I have 10 in my backyard. Okay.
She's in the county now.
But I'm in the county so far. But they are so easy to take care of, and the eggs are very healthy compared to anything you can buy in the grocery store, no matter what they say about being organic. And I don't have enough customers for my chickens, so I'm getting 6 more just because I have a demand for my eggs. But they are very easy to care for, and they don't create an issue. I have no rooster because I don't want to be woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning. So I'm thinking that, having chickens in town, and as long as you kind of limit the flock number, then it wouldn't be such an issue. And maybe, create a criteria that they would have to have certain kind of space and X amount of, enclosure. And they don't fly over our 4-foot fence, so there's no escaping the whole lot. but that would encourage kids to learn about farm animals that live in town, where they can't have a cow and a horse and a pig and other things, maybe gerbils they can have more of, but they wouldn't be able to, but they would actually have that farm opportunity to raise a farm animal, and quite frankly, chickens are birds, so they're not an animal, but that would give them opportunity to exhibit in 4-H and be part of 4-H. And I know Dana and all the 4-H people would really appreciate having a chance for city kids to have that opportunity to be participating in the fair more broadly. And did I say my name? I'm Patty Weaver, by the way.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else in the public would like to speak on General Ordinance 2? Michelle, I just have a point of information question before we move forward. Is there...
So that's why I wanted to bring up on this general ordinance. Technically, if you do not vote to table until April, then it will carry over to next week.
So we can do two things. We can vote to table until April this week, or we could do that later. Yes, Amy.
And that's what I was going to, I guess I'd feel better to vote, and then set it to table for next month, because then with us having the meeting next week, then we have time to work on things. So I guess with that being said, I move to vote on General Ordinance 2, 2019.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Aller and seconded by Councilman Nation that we vote on General Ordinance 2. We vote to table on General Ordinance 2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Madam President?
Yes.
I move that we table General Ordinance 2, 2019 to our first regular meeting.
April 4th.
4th.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilwoman Aller, seconded by Councilman Nation, that we table our consideration of General Ordinance 2, 2019 till our meeting on April 4th, 2019. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We will table that ordinance then. Any other business, Michelle?
Go ahead.
I think you're going to ask.
I have a question. Since we have no business next Thursday, other than the committee meeting, why are we going to have a meeting?
Or do we need to?
Just to come and look at each other? I mean, I like looking at you, but since we have no business, I don't understand the reason for a meeting. I make a motion, we cancel our regular meeting next Thursday.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we cancel our meeting next Thursday. Any discussion?
Well, should we reiterate the point that the deadline to file has already passed?
Right.
So there is none forthcoming, right?
Right.
We could make it.
Yeah, the deadline for the March 14th meeting was, 3 weeks ago. Was February 22nd.
Okay, so technically, there's nothing that could come up before next meeting anyway. So at least the public knows, okay.
And one other thing that I'd like to mention, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
This will be the second meeting that we've canceled this year. And I know that we changed the rules last year, right? And we talked at that time about staggering our meetings on the first and third Thursdays of the month rather than the first and second Thursdays of the month. I kicked myself in mid-January after we had already passed our schedule of meetings for this year without even raising this issue at all, after I realized that I missed my opportunity to remind the council that we had talked about doing that in 2019, about changing our schedule so that these meetings occur on the first and third Thursdays of the month. I'm wondering, I guess, I know that it doesn't make sense to change our schedule this year, but I would just ask the rest of the council to pay attention over the course of this year. And I'd ask our staff to advise us at some point as to whether this is helping or not, having the meetings on the first and second of the weeks of the month, and then nothing else happening for the rest of the month. To me, it seems like we might even all of this out by spreading the meetings out, but that's just my gut feeling. I don't have any data to back that up. I yield.
Thank you. I might just say, for the benefit of those present who might not understand what we're talking about, we used to have a sunshine meeting each month, the first meeting of the month, where we could not vote on anything. And then at our second meeting, we could vote on all things, and we changed that so that we could vote at both meetings. And what has happened is that we often clean everything up at the first meeting, and it's all taken care of for that month, and so there's not much to consider at the second meeting. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes of the year we're very busy, or we have things that really need two readings. So that's where this came from. Councilperson Garrison, you had a comment?
I do.
Yes.
And I think that I think it's worked pretty good, and I don't have a problem with Todd's recommendation for next year, but I think the whole purpose of it was so that we wouldn't have to keep bringing people back so that they say the same things twice. And we've been able to succeed in that. We've been still doing our job, even though we may not have to do it twice a month. We're getting it done once a month. We're not rushing things that don't need to be rushed. If something needs to be on the agenda for the next month, the council has done that. This month, we can't, because there's nothing to do. And I would remind the council that 10 years ago, or whenever Mr. Hyde said we voted on the animal ordinance, it took almost a year for us to really get the ordinance in the wording that it really needed to have done. So I think you're doing a great job, and if this committee, and I think that's great that the president has put this into a committee. I was hoping that would have been done years ago, and we just kind of never did that. And she's taken the bull by the horns and started putting them in committees, and I commend her for that. And I think that will speed that process up so that we're not going to take a year to get this done. So again, I think that things are working the way we wanted them to work, and I just hope the public understands that we're doing our job. We're just doing it a little faster.
And if I may, just to add to that, one of the big reasons for the change was to allow the attorneys and the administration 2 filing deadlines per month, whereas before you had 1 filing deadline. So now they have an extra week to file all of the ordinances, resolutions, and general ordinances to come before you. So it gives them a little bit extra more time each month to file everything.
Councilperson Garrison.
Michelle, do you think it would be better going on Todd's thought of going the first and third week? Is that more conducive to the public and businesses and the administration, giving 2 opportunities every other week as opposed to...
You guys keep throwing me under the bus tonight.
I'm just asking. I mean, if you need to send me an email, that's fine.
I'll just throw it out here for something for everybody to think. There's pros and cons for everything. If you would move it to the first and third, that would stretch the filing deadlines out. So whereas now our filing deadlines are the third Friday of the month and then the fourth Friday of the month usually, you would give an extra week. So that would give the petitioners, attorneys, and everyone else, city legal, 1 additional week.
It seems like it would be a benefit.
But it
really, I know we're not trying to think what's best for us, but what's best for the public, and it seems like that would be better.
And then you would have a week in between if you wanted to have a committee meeting. But we would also have to work with some other departments, and as I believe Councilman Nation stated, it would have to wait till 2020 because there is currently something scheduled at the third Thursday of every month.
So we start to set schedules then in December. Talk about December and set them in January.
Actually, it's through the school corporation because it's the Children's Characters Awards are the third Thursday. So you would have to work with the mayor's office to ask if they can move them.
You'd also have to change the rules, so you're going to have to start before December to do that. I mean, if you want to do this for 2020, this is a discussion we need to have this summer.
So when should we visit this? In the summer this year?
I would say that would be a good time, and that way you could get something passed in the fall. We'd have plenty of time to try and work something out.
Is there a way to remind us of some sort of a schedule so we can talk about it? Or the committee?
We'll do that.
Committee do that? Talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. And as with many things, there are, it's more complex than it appears on its face sometimes, so, yeah.
Two things. Number one, remember, this wasn't my idea, like it last time, so, and number two, we want to keep the committee meeting for 5:30 next week?
Yes.
Okay.
5:30?
5.
I'm sorry, 5.
We do have a motion in front of us. That motion is not as complex as the conversation was. That motion is, as I recall, that we would cancel the meeting of the council for March 14th. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we will not have a council meeting this week, but we will have the special meeting of the committee. So those of you who are here tonight on the General Ordinance 2, you can be with some of us next week, too. So.
And I'd like to compliment Lynn on his sweater. Beautiful. That's it.
Is there any other business before the council? I think not.
If not, I move to adjourn.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?